Sometimes production hell, unreasonable directors and egomaniacal actors result in a cult classic films. This is not one of these stories, but it is a story in which the behind the scenes are far more interesting than the actual movie. The Island of Dr. Moreau is a 1996 science fiction movie based on the 1896 book by H.G. Wells. It's a great book, I read it when I was young, and the basic premise is that Dr. Moreau wants to create a perfect man-beast by combining animals and humans on a South Pacific island. Then he's discovered by a man who crashes nearby. Now, the 1996 movie was the third attempt at bringing this story to the big screen. At first, we had a 1932 version called Island of Lost Souls, starring Charles Lawton.
Not men! Not bees! Fart man!
Then another attempt in 1977, this time called The Island of Dr. Moreau, starring Burt Lancaster.
Montgomery.
Montgomery's dead.
And then for years, South African director Richard Stanley tried to get the story adapted again. The 1996 version starring Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer will be the focus on this video, and the chaos that ensued during the production.
I think it should be shown in film schools for anyone who is stupid enough to want to direct movies.
Richard Stanley was mostly known for the 1990 cult movie Hardware, which I watched many times in my childhood, and the movie introduced me to Motorhead with the Ace of Spades, but also for 1992 Dust Devil. And for his next project, he wanted to do the Dr. Moreau adaptation, and New Line Cinema agreed on a small $8 million budget.
My father gave me a small loan of $1 million
to be filmed in Cairns, Australia.
We just thought that Richard Stanley doing Island of Dr. Moreau was one of the most exciting projects we'd heard of in a while.
This is going to be a huge project, and this is going to propel Richard Stanley into the superstardom that he deserves as an auteur.
But then, all of a sudden, the studio cast Marlon Brando, the, legendary actor, as Dr. Moreau.
And it is here, on this very island, that I, sir, have found the very essence of the devil.
Meaning, what was supposed to be this sort of a small sci-fi horror transformed into a massive production.
Unmistakably human. Undeniably animal. On the island of Dr. Moreau.
On top of that, Richard Stanley was out, and controversial Polish director Roman Polanski was in to make the movie.
The very next thing I heard was that, yes, Brando was prepared to be Dr. Moreau. The money was in escrow, and that the film was greenlit and was going to be directed by Roman Polanski, which came completely out of the left of field. I hadn't seen that coming.
Now, Stanley wasn't having any of it and demanded a meeting with Marlon Brando, who begrudgingly agreed. Stanley knew that the deck was stacked against him, so he decided to use witchcraft.
Knowing that the odds were stacked against me, I resorted to witchcraft.
He got Dr. Edward James Featherstone, known as Skip, to perform a ritual for luck. Quote, Skip convened his coven, cut his arm, drew a sigil, and did some sort of a routine to make it all right. Now, it must have worked, because after the meeting, Brando said he would only do the project if Stanley directed it. So Polanski was fired, and Richard Stanley was back in.
As this sort of esoteric witchiness, which is sort of a trademark of Richard Stanley's works and his life in general.
But unfortunately for Stanley, his spells stopped working soon after, when a hurricane hit Cairns, destroying the sets and the equipment. The director was out of luck again, and New Line decided to fire him again. Now this time by sending a fax.
I had to let Richard go.
Golden Globes reported that Stanley did not take it well, and he had some kind of a mental breakdown.
The
buzz is just, you walk through the halls and just hear, did you hear about, oh my God, the Richard Stanley climbed into a tree today, it wouldn't come down.
According to that report, he started destroying his notes, research and documents, just, shredding it all. The studio said they would pay him, the whole salary if he just got on a plane and go home. Instead, he decided to go full Rambo and disappeared into the rainforest.
The original director who got kicked off the movie ended up going into the jungle, disappearing into the jungle, and came back as an extra as one of the creatures. And so he's there and without the producers knowing.
And the story goes that he snatched some costumes and then got back on set playing a dog-man character in several scenes before the crew discovered it was really him.
It got so hot when we were working. So I was trying to give them breaks as often as I could, and they would pull the head back and drink some water. And there was this guy, one of them, that was never doing it. I kept watching him, and he would never take his head off.
He said, I had completed the full arc from creative person to dog. Nevertheless, his stint as a director was over, and New Line Studios negotiated with John Frankenheimer to take over the project. He was an American director known for movies like The Manchurian Candidate from 1962 or the one that I actually know, Ronin from 1998 with Robert De Niro.
What's in the case?
That information isn't necessary.
Is it heavy? Is it explosive? Is it chained to some unlucky bloke's wrist? We're gonna have to chop it off?
All right.
What is it?
From the Lost Soul documentary and other sources, it is clear that Frankenheimer wasn't the nicest to the Dr. Moreau team.
And he was heavy-handed with the Australian crew, which he would loudly denounce at lunch and say that it's the worst crew he'd ever seen and he wanted his American crew.
He got new writers, he shut down the whole production, he implemented new changes to the script. Plus, he wanted Marlon Brando to have input on the project, even though some of his ideas were seen as, let's say, a bit out there.
You and I are going to rewrite the script, and we'll spend 6 or 8 weeks rewriting it because I have some ideas about how Dr. Moreau should be wearing a hat all the time, and at the end of the movie takes off his hat and he's actually a dolphin.
But the new director wanted to please the star and agreed to the changes. Subscribed yet? Thanks. So let's talk about the actors. There have been substantial changes to the cast throughout the production, but we start with Marlon Brando. Everyone knew Brando could be difficult, and he didn't disappoint as Dr. Moreau. He showed up a week late, his face completely white, wearing a muumuu dress, gloves and sunglasses. He wanted an ice bucket on his head as part of the costume, to stay cool, of course.
He was always playing with the idea of being hot and overheated. He wanted an ice bucket on top of his head.
I don't blame him. It gets hot in Australia. He didn't memorize his lines. He didn't read the script. He argued with the director, or directors as there were multiple, and didn't want to get out of his trailer because of the air conditioning.
What's your earliest childhood memory?
He kept adding new ideas to the character.
Brando's in the palanquin and he says, John, I think we need some peacock feathers behind my head. Wouldn't it look better if we had some peacock feathers?
When filming, Brando had an earpiece and just repeated the lines that crew was sending to him. Now the issue was that the equipment was picking up police scanners, so he would randomly repeat police calls during his scenes.
I remember one time a take was going rather smoothly and then he stopped in the middle of it and he said, "God damn it, Carolyn, I told you not to act."
He then became obsessed with actor Nelson de la Rosa, who was one of the shortest men alive due to his Seckle syndrome. Brando wanted to have him in every scene, which led to script rewrites and character changes. They even wore matching outfits.
Meling Vettel, just beautiful. Thank you so much. Terry Turner. Go ahead.
And some crew members said that De La Rosa was also being a bit of a dick on set, harassing female extras and causing troubles.
We would go out and we'd go dancing and stuff. He'd get down but yeah, he was very sexual.
And apparently De La Rosa inspired Mini-Me from the Austin Powers movies.
I shall call him Mini-Me.
At first, Bruce Willis was cast as Edward, a diplomat who discovers Moreau's island. But, as Richard Stanley said, due to an impending divorce, Wills quit and they replaced him with Val Kilmer. Not only Kilmer demanded 40% less shooting days, but he also got served divorce papers when on set, which made him difficult to work with.
Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer were there to mess with the film as much as possible.
Now, to placate Kilmer, Richard Stanley, who was still the director at the time, swapped roles with Val Kilmer now playing Dr. Montgomery, who was Moreau's assistant.
Oh, you'll like it. I like it. Little Jimi Hendrix.
And Rob Moreau was to play Edward, the diplomat. But on the second day of the filming, Moreau quit due to the production chaos and David Thewlis replaced him. Now, Richard Stanley started crumbling under the pressure, but Kilmer didn't care. He became hated on set by everyone, acting as a diva and a massive prick. He was constantly late. He didn't show up for rehearsals. He phoned in his performance and just was trouble, you know? Even though he made $6 million for the role.
Richard went to give him some direction, and Val said, Richard, directors stand behind the cameras, actors are in front of the camera. Now go stand behind the camera.
And even after Stanley was out and Frankenheimer took over as a director, it didn't improve his behavior. Frankenheimer said, and I quote, "If I was directing a film called The Life of Val Kilmer, I wouldn't have that prick in it." Apparently, Brando hated Kilmer's behavior and said, "Your problem is you confuse your talent with the size of your paycheck." Still, it seems it was a game for them, who can be the biggest dick. They would make everyone wait for hours as they didn't want to be seen getting out of the trailers first. Issues with directors and main actors spilled over, and the rest of the crew, as well as extras, got swept up in the chaos. Pauses in production, waiting for rewrites, and ego fights between actors meant that everyone else had lots of time on their hands. They spent it drinking, partying, and having orgies.
You know, Sherlock Holmes once asked Dr. Watson, "Did you notice the remarkable thing about the dog barking?"
It probably didn't help that Frankenheimer hired homeless hippies as extras, because they were more than happy to party.
They advertised for ferals and hippies and people with amputations and anything they could work with to make it sort of like a bunch of monsters.
The Island of Dr. Moreau was released in 1996 and it was a critical and box office flop. It made less than $50 million on a $40 million production budget. That's not counting marketing, theater cut, and other costs. Respected critic Roger Ebert said it was, quote, perhaps Marlon Brando's worst film. It was also nominated for 6 Razzie Awards and Stinker's Bad Movie Awards. You know, sometimes these chaotic productions, even if they result in a flop, become cult classics over time. Now, this didn't happen to The Island of Dr. Moreau. Instead, it became an example of bad direction, actors with massive egos, and a crew who just wanted all of it to end and decided to pass the time with crazy parties. You know, stories like that always show that making a movie, a music album, or any creative endeavor requires an incredible amount of professionalism, but also luck and hope that the stars will align in the end. Unfortunately, that is quite rare. Thanks for watching the video. You can like, you can subscribe, maybe comment, and it helps us make more videos like that in the future. See ya.
Look at these people!